Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you guys are having a good day. We are here in front of the honeycomb farm that we made last time, and I now have an output chest with a row of hoppers leading to it to make sure that all of the honeycomb ends up in one place. I like this little thing. We're probably going to expand it out to a few more modules just so we can up the honeycomb production, because despite not really having a use, I really like this block. It's actually kind of nice. It's got a very cool aesthetic to it that I think we can use in a lot of different ways. Today we're going to be taking a bit of a break from working with bees. I do have a couple of other things that I have planned with these bees that you guys are going to like a lot, I think, including an upgrade to the honey farm that we built a few episodes ago. But today we're going to look at some of the other changes that have come about in this update. Some quality of life features, some stuff that is just feature parity with the Bedrock edition. I've mentioned a couple of these things already, and we're also going to cover the last advancement that you can get in this version that's been added as part of Minecraft 1.15, because it has to do with honey blocks. So I'm going to fly back over to the center of Founder's Forge and we're going to get these things underway. And we may as well get started with this advancement for sliding down a set of honey blocks in order to slow down your fall. Honey blocks have a variety of really interesting properties to them, and we've covered a couple of those in a previous episode, being able to be slowed down while you're walking on them. They reduce your jump height, and they also have a mechanic that slows you down while you're falling as well. And this is the last advancement that I need to get to complete the entire set. The problem is, I already have it. I think it's here in Husbandry. Whereabouts is that? There's the, or is it in one of the Adventure advancements? Yes, there it is. Sticky situation. Jump into a honey block to break your fall. I accidentally got this on a live stream, so what I'm going to do very quickly here is show you how to revoke advancements so I can demonstrate how to get this one nice and easily. So what you need to do is type /advancement, we'll autofill that, revoke, autofill that, Pixlriffs, because that's my username, only, because we only want to revoke one advancement, and then if you type Minecraft and then put a colon in there, it will show you Adventure as the category, and from there, Honey Block Slide is the one you want. They've all got different code names. Some of them are just the name as it appears in the Advancements tab, but some of them just have a separate name, like Kill All Mobs, for example, I think is the one called Monsters Hunted, and so they don't have exactly the same names all of the time. In this case, Honey Block Slide is the one we want to revoke, so I'm going to hit enter, and we have revoked the advancement sticky situation from our character. So now if I open that up, you can see it is grayed out in the advancements tab once again, and if I leap at this and slide down, there we go, we have made the advancement sticky situation nice and easy. But basically that is to encourage players to play around with the physics of honey blocks now that they are in the game, and it is actually really cool that you can slide down these a little bit more slowly. In fact, if we build these up super high, and by super high I mean about 20 blocks high because that's all the scaffolding I had on me, we can see the effects of that are actually quite strong. It is taking me a while to fall 20 blocks, and I'm certainly not going to take any fall damage at the end of it. But while honey blocks will break your fall in a similar way to hay bales, they will reduce the damage you take when you fall on them. They will not let you bounce like slime blocks. Honey blocks and slime blocks, in terms of the physics they have, are very different, even though they do look quite similar, and they have some similarities we'll be exploring in a future episode. And now, having slept for the night, we may as well discuss another quality of life feature that I did mention in one of the first episodes where we updated to 1.15, and that is the fact that you can now right-click on a bed during the day to set a respawn point without having to sleep in it. Previously, of course, you would have to sleep the night, or at least sleep in a bed and not skip the night in order to set your spawn point. Now, during the day, I can demonstrate with another bed that I've got here. I can simply right-click on this bed, and now my respawn point is set there. Now, I am fairly certain that if I break this bed, it's not going to respawn me there if I die or if I return from the end. And I know which one I would rather do, because I have 133 levels on me right now, so let's break the bed and see if I end up respawning there when I return from the end dimension. Alright, I have hopped through to the end. I'm going to return through the portal, and let's see where I end up. Nope, I did get the home bed missing or obstructed message, so I ended up right back here at the natural world spawn right next to the farmhouse. Okay, that's good to know. So even if you set your respawn point using a bed during the day, you will end up at the natural spawn point if you end up breaking it. These days I like my spawn point to be over here at my storage system, that way I can immediately put away anything that I get on a trip out to the end, so I'm going to set my spawn point there and we're going to carry on. The next port of call is actually the villager trading hall, because there is an iron golem in here who is in need of medical attention. I have a few iron golems up here patrolling the area. There's a few of them just kind of moseying around just in case anything happens to get in here and threaten the villagers, and they are all looking hale and hearty. They're looking in fine health. However, this lad in the fountain is another story. He is looking cracked and worn down and broken, and that is because iron golems now have a sort of damage indicator in the form of their appearance. They will start to crack and age and look, frankly, really quite sad if they have been attacked and taken some damage, because of course they don't naturally regenerate in any way. But now, by right-clicking on them with iron ingots, we can actually heal them back up a little bit, and all we should need is a couple more iron ingots, and this guy will be back to full health. Naturally, the more damaged they are, the more cracked and broken they will look, but a few iron ingots should fix them up, and now this guy is looking nice and healthy again, although I am probably going to have to figure out a way of getting him out of the fountain. The next thing we're going to cover is also kind of related to village life, but in a slightly different way. I'm going to take down this bell and grab a little bit of redstone stuff. I've got some redstone components on me because bells can now be activated using a redstone signal, which is kind of cool. It's something that we have kind of expected to happen with bells in the first place, but I'm fairly certain if I just grab myself a wooden button or something like that, I'm sure I have some spruce buttons in here. Yep, there we go. And now if we trigger a bell like so, it actually rings the bell remotely, which is really, really useful in the event that you are hiding in a watchtower or something for a raid to happen in a naturally spawned village, and you have the bell there to warn the villagers of the raid coming, or maybe you want to ring the bell to light up the enemies in the area with that glowing effect. Activating the bell remotely will mean you don't have to leave your position. As long as you've got a bit of redstone wire set up, you'll be able to trigger the bell from wherever you are standing, and that will allow you to keep your lookout, keep your overwatch on the area so that you can take out anything that happens to be highlighted by the glowing effect. Not to mention the fact that having bells activated remotely could make for some really interesting puzzle mechanics in adventure maps and stuff like that. Your imagination can run wild a little bit. You can even use it in place of a note block to create a chime when you wanted to, enter a shop or something like that. Have a bell above the door if you want to. That's really opened out some interesting things you can do with bells, and I'm quite happy about that change, even though I don't use bells all that often. Maybe I will now. If you have ever cleared out an ocean monument with only a small handful of sponge, you probably know the pain of waiting for the furnaces to smelt the wet sponge back into dry sponge. Now, there is an alternative, and it's an alternative that's been presented in the form of the Nether. This is something that's been brought over from Bedrock Edition, and the Nether naturally is a very dry place. If you place a bucket of water in the Nether, it's going to disappear immediately and turn into steam particles, and they decided that wet sponges placed in the Nether should probably become dry instantly. So now we can do that in Java Edition as well as in Bedrock Edition. All I have to do is hop through to the Nether hub, place the sponges down, there's a little hissing effect and a few particles of steam, and the entire thing dries out and we can gather it back up again, which is way faster than doing this with furnaces. Even if you are, having to go through a Nether portal to get here in the first place, that's just brilliant. It's such a great quality of life change, and it will make so much of a difference for people who are clearing out a large area of water. And now we've dried out all that water, how about extinguishing some fire? Campfires can now be extinguished using a shovel, which is something people were quite keen to point out to me in the episode where we were dealing with the campfires underneath our beehives and bee nests over here. If you right-click on a campfire, the shovel will simply put it out like so, and you can relight it again with a flint and steel if you want to. It was previously possible to do this using water buckets, and you didn't lose the water in the process, but it is kind of nice that you can do that with a shovel now and not have to worry about bringing a bucket of water with you. And considering that an unlit campfire is actually a really interesting texture, a lot of people use it for things like paths or railway sleepers for a miniature track or a kind of like trellis in an outdoor setting. I think it's going to be so much nicer to go through and right-click on each of these with a shovel instead of having to place down buckets of water every time you wanted to extinguish them. Another cool thing, if you haven't got a flint and steel on you, but if you do have a silk touch tool that you can use to pick the campfires up, they will simply relight once you gather them up. There is no way of collecting an unlit campfire as an item in your inventory. While we're on the subject of cooking things, we might as well take a few of these boats, which I have not needed to use for quite some time, and start using them as fuel in furnaces, because boats will now smelt a few more items. In fact, they are not the only thing that has changed the amount of items it can burn, and scaffolding is looking like a very useful renewable fuel source now. So let's head into the farmhouse here where we can put stuff in the furnaces here one at a time, and let's see how much stuff each of these will smelt. I've got a bunch of raw cod in here that I may as well try cooking, so let's put that in there, and let's put one boat in here. Now we can expect boats to now cook 6 items in a furnace, which is kind of more useful than they were before. I think before they would only do 1 or 2, and I think that's to bring it more in line with the amount of wood that goes into a boat in the first place, and the fact that boats are actually kind of large, you would expect them to burn in a furnace for longer. Now, given that they don't stack and they're actually kind of useful, I wouldn't expect everybody to suddenly start using boats as fuel all the time, but it's certainly something that would be useful in a pinch if you don't think you're going anywhere after that. Now that we've cooked those cod, let's use the scaffolding and see how long this burns for. Bamboo does not have a particularly long burn time, but scaffolding, because it uses 6 bamboo, seems to cook for a little bit longer. I would estimate we're going to get 3 items out of this. Maybe 2, it looks like potentially 2. There we go, we got 2 cooked cod out of 1 piece of scaffolding, and considering that bamboo will only cook 1 item for 4 bamboo at a time, that's actually not too bad. I think you have to craft it together with string as well, but considering the sheer amount of scaffolding you can craft with bamboo and string, that actually might be quite a useful fuel source if you've got nothing else handy. Yeah, given how easy it is to farm bamboo and string compared to the other fuel sources we've got here, things like blaze rods that require a lot more setup, early game especially, scaffolding is going to be really worth having. Here is another change that I'm actually kind of happy about. Dark Prismarine can now be crafted using black dye instead of just ink sacs. I've got a lot of ink sacs here anyway because I have a squid farm, but in the event that it's more convenient for you to farm with roses, you can actually craft that into black dye and craft dark prismarine using black dye instead of ink sacs. So now that means the only recipe you actually need ink sacs for is a book and quill, which requires an ink sac, a book, and a feather. So ink sacs are kind of going the way of the dinosaur in an odd way. Then again, with the recent addition of lecterns into Minecraft, you can imagine people making books and quills quite frequently, so potentially that's not too much of a problem. Now over here at our honey farm, I showed you guys recently that it was possible to bottle honey using a dispenser full of empty glass bottles, and it is also possible to bottle water in the exact same way. Dispensers have gone through a couple of changes, and this is a major one. And this is actually a really significant change for automatic brewing setups, so I'm going to make a little modification to the one that we have in here. Right now, I have a bunch of water bottles in this chest here, but they have to be full water bottles, which means that they cannot be stacked anymore, whereas glass bottles can be stacked in stacks of 64, so it's actually much more economical in terms of space and, you know, longer lasting, I suppose, to have a chest full of empty glass bottles that are only going to be filled up when you need them. And for that, we can actually install a little redstone mechanism here that's going to fill up 3 bottles and deposit them into this hopper every time we want them. Just to quickly demonstrate, I'm going to knock the edge off of this and flood the entire potion brewing room for a second, and then we'll put some glass bottles in here, and I should have plenty of those left over from where we've been gathering up the honey and turning it into honey blocks. Now, if I activate this dispenser, like so, bam, it bottles some water, and it also activates that, but ignore that, and it sucks it back into the dispenser. So much like with the honey farm, we're going to figure out a way to remove the water bottle from the dispenser again, and there's actually kind of a neat way we can end up doing this. The first thing I'm going to do is pop down a chest over there so I can move all of these water bottles out, because we're actually going to remove this chest entirely. There we go, we can get rid of that. I can remove anything else from this hopper as well. We got a few water bottles in there already, that's totally fine, but one of my problems with this whole setup is that the lever here was not quite reliable enough in activating the redstone that it would block any more water bottles from filtering through into that hopper below, and that's why I ended up with a splash water bottle one time, just being careless with how this whole thing was set up. Now I should be able to set up a redstone circuit that will pulse a dispenser up here 3 times, getting it to empty 3 bottles of water out into the hopper down here, and this is actually going to be very easy to do. So I'm going to place a dispenser here facing downwards, like so, and that's going to be full of glass bottles in every single slot. All of these are going to be occupied, probably with a full stack of glass bottles if we can have them to spare, and I think I've got enough in this shulker box that we should be able to fill the entire thing up. There we go, almost. We've got 33 that we could put in that last slot there to fill the entire thing up. That should be fine. We'll put the rest of these water bottles in here. Now, we just need to place a water source here, which I'm probably going to take this water source here. I'm actually going to take the trapdoors from this so that I can set it up on the side of the machine. And now with this trapdoor open, I'm going to place a water source in there, and anytime I activate this dispenser, like so, it's going to bottle some water for me. It also activates that once again, but we don't need to worry about that in a second. We can take that off, and now there is one water bottle waiting in here. Now we just have the interesting problem of activating this dispenser 3 times. And there's not a whole lot of ways to activate something 3 times, but I think I've come up with a pretty good way of doing it. We will need an observer, we will need a redstone lamp. Okay, we've got all of the stuff in here. We need a sticky piston for this as well. We need to place the redstone lamp 1 block out from the dispenser here, and we're going to have the redstone lamp be detected by an observer like this. Let's see if I can get up here and place it in the right direction. Nope, that's clearly facing the wrong way. There we go. Okay, so the arrow is pointing that way. The observer is outputting into the dispenser, and it's detecting when the redstone lamp is going to be turned on or off. Now, I'll need to place a sticky piston a couple of blocks below this. Let's use the honey blocks here as placeholders. So we'll put a sticky piston there for right now, and that's going to be dragging the redstone lamp up and down. I don't think honey blocks can actually conduct redstone, so this may have been a bad example. Surely we've got some blocks in here we can use. There we go, polished andesite. Perfect. So let's put that down there, and we can put a spruce button on top of this. So now when we press that, it's going to pull that out of the way. Getting rid of that andesite block there, we're actually going to place it on top of here, and then we're going to put a button on the side there with a dot of redstone dust on the top. And I should have some redstone dust in here as well, because what this is going to do is when the button is pushed, it's going to temporarily power the redstone lamp and push it up into the place of the observer. What this is going to do, and I'm not sure if we need a wooden button or a stone button, I don't know if the pulse length will really matter here, but the redstone lamp is going to be pushed up into there. It's going to activate the observer once. It's going to depower because it will be removed from the source of the redstone current, and that's going to activate the observer again because of a block update, and then when the piston pulls it back down, that's actually going to power the observer a 3rd time because the block in front of the observer is changing again. So now, there we go. We got 3 bottles out of that, and there are probably 4 in here right now. Oh, wait, no, there are 3. So maybe I did take that one out after all. It's in my inventory. There we go. Just for the sake of neatness, I've replaced that trapdoor there with an andesite block, just so it doesn't keep flapping up and down and opening when we activate this whole circuit. But here we go. We should press that once. We get 2 ticks, we get a 3rd tick, and there are 3 bottles in there now. So that has added a 3-bottle dispenser circuit to our auto brewer, which was already very button press heavy as it was, so maybe there is a way of automating this in future, but for now I think that's actually kind of cool. There are probably smarter ways of having a dispenser pulse something 3 times, and we could even automate this briefly by having it be triggered by this lever here if we wanted to, but you know, I think this is quite a neat solution overall. And of course all we need up here is a hopper running into that dispenser with a chest on top of it, and we'll basically never run out of glass bottles again. One other change that's happened to dispensers, and one that I don't expect I will use all that much, but is still kind of noteworthy in the first place, is that dispensers will now fire fireworks in the direction the dispenser is pointing. Previously, when a dispenser put out a firework, it would just have it immediately fly upwards regardless of which direction it was facing, but now, if we activate this using a button as before, we should be able to, there we go, have it fly horizontally, which looks a little bit weird and glitchy right now, and would probably make a lot more sense if we were doing that with one of the fireworks that has a firework star, so it would have some sort of effect, but it's still kind of cool that you can shoot stuff sideways now. Would certainly make a little bit of sense if you were using dispensers as, I don't know, castle fortifications, or, you know, laser guns on the front of a spaceship or something like that, and you wanted to have some kind of, you know, practical effect going on there. Fireworks would be a good way to do that. Another important change to take note of that's another parity feature from Minecraft Bedrock Edition is that composters now no longer require fences in the crafting recipe. Instead, it's just 7 slabs in a U-shape like that. Actually kind of nice, I think, because crafting fences just to craft them into a composter always felt like an unnecessary additional step. And I may be wrong about this, but I think it might even work out a little bit cheaper than building them with fences was. There are a few other things that I'd have to go go a little bit further afield to mention, like the fact that parrots can now ride on your shoulder even if you're on a horse or riding in a boat, and the fact that baby mobs will sometimes pack spawn with any kind of mob that can have babies. So like if you get a bunch of chickens naturally spawning in the wild, you will get a baby chicken with them sometimes. Same with cows, pigs, and so forth. Horses already did that, so it's kind of nice that the other animals have been included in that as well. And this is the part of the video where I'm actually quite happy I've enabled cheats in this world, because I get to show you a couple of commands that have changed. For a start, we have Igamerule do immediate respawn, which is kind of an interesting one because it skips the death screen when a player dies and actually just has them respawn immediately at their spawn point. Basically, an anti-rage quit Igamerule is what this is, because it doesn't offer you the option to respawn or quit to the menu screen, it just respawns you immediately. And to be honest, I don't use that death screen all that much, but it is kind of nice to have it as a moment of reflection before you hit respawn in the event that you die, so I'm probably not going to enable this one, but it might be worth having stuff like that on servers where you want the respawn to be a little bit faster, or for mini-games, so you don't have to click to get back into the action. That kind of stuff might be worth having that game rule enabled. And while we're on the subject of dying, or in this case, not dying, there are a few game rules that change whether or not you can be damaged by certain sources of damage, one of which I'm going to demonstrate now because it is drowning damage. If you turn off game rule drowning damage false, like so, drowning damage is set to false, so now even if I take off my respiration helmet, I haven't got any kind of potions of water breathing or anything like that, my bubbles here are going to deplete, and I should not take any damage once we get to the bottom there. There we go. I'm not taking any damage. I'm effectively breathing underwater, and this is absolutely not a rule I intend to keep, just something that was interesting to show you, and now I'm drowning. Aside from drowning damage, there are two other types of damage which can be limited using commands now, the first of which is fall damage. So imagine you're making some kind of map where you don't want the player to take fall damage, a bit more like an old school video game where the survival aspect isn't dictated by how far you end up falling, and that's something you can now disable by doing game rule fall damage false. By the same token, you can also disable fire damage. So if you want to be able to walk through fire without it damaging you, and presumably anything that hurts you using fire, like lava, blazes, campfires, that kind of stuff, those will no longer damage you if you disable game rule fire damage. Set that to false as well. Now, once again, I'm not going to enable any of those in my world because I feel like they are not part of the traditional survival experience that we're trying to get out of this game, but really, I think it's nice that those are there. They're going to make things better for people who have slower reflexes when it comes to this kind of stuff. Maybe if you want to enable certain rules in an adventure map, you can toggle those on and off using commands as you're walking through. So maybe if you want your players to be immune to fire after a certain point, or to become a mer person and breathe underwater, there's some cool stuff you can do with those. Commands are really more for that kind of creative play, not the kind of thing that I'm planning on enabling in the survival world in the slightest. But I think with that is pretty much all of the changes I wanted to cover in this video. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.